What should you avoid doing when you're changing chords on guitar? I'm going to play a pretty common scenario that can happen, players, and just check out how it sounds, which will be obvious. Then I'm going to share what led to it happening, so the things I did quote unquote wrong. Okay, so here we go. Now, you'll have spotted the C and the D were slower changes, and I want to pinpoint what caused it. A lot of times when players play, you think of the chord you're currently on, and then what happens is you begin to think of what's the next chord only at the point that it's nearly on the brink of happening. So, and you can get away with that on E minor, like you can be on G, and last minute just think E minor, oh yeah. But for other chords, we've got to think much farther in advance. And this is where I frame it as driving. It's almost if you were driving and there was a turn coming up the road that you put on your turn signal or your indicator, and you know it's coming up, you can see it in the distance coming up, you're getting closer to it, and then you start turning a bit in advance of the corner. You don't suddenly go like that last minute, because it'll be unsteady, like our chord changes. And for that, so if I'm on G, and you can try this on G to E minor with me, and it should work because E minor isn't so bad, but for the trickier chord changes then we'll talk. So I'm on G, then E, and as I strum G, notice I'm looking here. I'm not looking at my strumming hand. So I'm on G, E minor. So as I play G, I'm picturing the E minor, where it is going to happen. I'm looking at the fingers that are going to move to E minor next, and I'm thinking about E minor, even though I'm on G. And you might go, but should we not think about the chord we're on? Yeah, we can do, and it's good. Like check, check are the fingers close to the frets. But once you've established that within the first beat or so of your bar, within the first few strums, you don't need to keep looking at the G going, is everything okay here? Because E minor is the next important chord. So then you basically think in advance of what's next, it's E minor, and then you make the change. And this is what I call a 100-meter Olympic final sprint reaction time. Changing between your chords, there's always an extra level of urgency that we can have to change chords. And a lot of us miss that because nobody likes to feel uncomfortable. And it does feel uncomfortable to be put in a rush. Like it'd be so annoying if I was beside you as you played chords and I was like, change, 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 go fast, go fast, go, 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 go. Now, I do it in lessons here, but I give students a heads up. But they're kind of amazed, like, God, I didn't know I was kind of more chilled out. They'll say, changing chords. It's only when you're like, go, 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 that I sped up a bit. And the cool thing about it is, that urgency of making yourself go faster, it is uncomfortable, and it does feel like you're pushing yourself to a limit. But if you do that enough times on your chord changes, the chord change will begin to get quicker more naturally, it will feel easier, it will feel more normal, and as a process of all that, the change, that rushing yourself won't feel as urgent anymore, and you'll still get your chord change. Right? So I'm moving fast, right? And the other key thing to watch here is, so I'm thinking in advance of what's coming next, turn signal, picturing the fingers, I'm looking at the fingers. By the time I've strummed my last strum, I've moved to really fast, urgency. And the other thing that happens is this, and this is the, I don't know what it's called, the death knell of like chord changes. If this is happening. Shaking head side to side. The amount of lost time, and not to mention focus, if I said to you, you have to move back and over like this as you're playing, you'd go, that sounds like what's that doing? But a lot of us do that. I did the same when I began. I literally would look at a chord as I strummed, then I'd look over here. you want to begin to train yourself to look at your fretboard hand, because chords are going to get faster, especially if there's like going, especially if there's fills and stuff. You'll want to begin to train yourself to look at your fretboard hand, right? So that's the other tip on what to avoid when you're changing chords. It's this thing of looking back and over. Now, we've talked already about, like, another thing to avoid is using language to describe your chord changes that isn't numeric. So here's an example. If you were to ask me, hey Dave, how's your A to G change? And I go, it's not too bad. Does that give you much info? And then a week later you say, how's the change now? And I go, it's getting on okay. See the way language, it's vague, like it's blurry. But if you asked me, if you said, how many changes per minute can you do going between G and A right now? And I said, I can do seven in a minute on average. And then a week passes and you ask me, Dave, how many changes can you do between G and A in a minute? And I go, 5. Something be up, wouldn't it? I've gone from 7 to 5. So what you want to do is use numbers to measure. And the good news too is, by the way, if you find that your numbers are hitting a plateau or they're not getting much quicker, then that's just feedback to go and look at the chord changes. Is there anything else we can work on in the chord change or the chord shapes? You know, the numbers are our friend. They give us information on guitar. And I totally get that this may seem very analytical and static and like, thought guitar is about playing songs and having fun. It is. But I have seen it time and time again, students get there a lot faster if they take these chords and chord changes and strumming things, if you take them and find out how to measure them, how to master them, and how to fix them if they're not working. All right, so I hope you found this useful. The other small thing is I'll share is, if your chord change is doing this, you saw there I played the strum pattern and then there was a pause and then I changed and kept going, like a little pause. That's because when that happens, it's sending a message to your brain that the chord hand is in control of what happens, that the show must not go on until the chord is on. And watch, G. There was a pause. And you saw the strumming hand stop. But what would happen if you said the strumming hand was calling the shots and the strumming hand will continue to move and it was up to the chord hand to catch up? So now what's happening is the strumming hand is saying, I'm going to keep playing. And it's saying to this hand, you better get your chord on, because if you don't, it's going to sound really dodgy and everyone's going to hear it. You know, it forces this hand to, and it's another form of urgency, like what we talked about earlier, right? The ultimate form of urgency is prizes. There was once a young student I taught, and just as a joke, I said, what if I said I'd give you an Xbox 360 if you could change like double the amount of times you could change in a minute? And oh my God, I wish there could have been a study done on this. This guy, he just played so much faster and better in that minute. And then we had to talk about how there was no like Xbox 360 for him. But anyways, but it goes to show, like, when there's urgency there, like, motivation is not a problem. So with the chord, if you got a G or whatever change you'd find tricky, do the rhythm twice on the first chord. So do it on the G and again. And notice the way when I play it, I'll do it twice again. I'll look at my chord hand and I want to feel how it feels for my hand to keep moving. That's the feeling we want to remember. Because now what we want to do is we want to keep that feeling in the hand, doing the rhythm twice, but we want to do G first, then E minor. So watch. Lift. And you can give yourself that little command of a lift or move, something like that, right? And that there can really help the chord change as well. So to summarize this lesson, the first thing we're saying not to do was not to spend all the time looking at your strumming hand and going back and over like this. The second thing was to fair enough, concentrate on the chord you're on, but don't only think about that chord and then suddenly start thinking about the next chord when it's on the brink of happening. So think of the next chord in advance. The next thing is, don't let the chord hand call all the shots. The strumming hand you must train the brain and the muscle memory for the strumming hand to keep going. So don't stop that strumming hand. Let it keep going and let the chords move between them. Right, so again, like the other lessons, you may need to rewatch this one again, but of course you have your guide as well. I have all these bullet points done out in the guide. It was just the purpose of the video. It's very useful to go more in depth on things and give like visuals and audio examples. And hey, it's inside the community, so of course if you have any questions, just ask away. I'm here to help, so are other members, and I'll see you in the next lesson.